Which platform should you choose and how do you even work on it? You're absolutely right. Different platforms have different algorithms and they work a bit differently. Even though YouTube has Shorts, Shorts has both a recommendation feed and your videos can show up in search results based on keywords. I would recommend paying attention to SEO on YouTube, meaning you need to understand that your content will be found through search queries. YouTube is somewhat similar to Google, where people search for something and find it. Of course, YouTube has a recommendations feed that is built based on what you've watched and your interests, but it doesn't work as effectively as it does on TikTok because the principle of the recommendation feed on TikTok is constant scrolling. So in a given amount of time, you'll see a lot more new trending videos than you would on a single screen in YouTube's recommendations. So what should you pay attention to on YouTube? So in a given amount of time, you'll see a lot more new trending videos than you would on a single screen in YouTube's recommendations. So what should you pay attention to on YouTube? First of all, I recommend setting up your channel on YouTube. This should include the channel's cover, an attractive profile picture, a description, keywords, and of course, thumbnails for each of your videos. The thumbnail on YouTube is extremely important when we talk about long videos, not the shorts format, but long ones, because the thumbnail acts as a kind of clickbait when a person sees a certain phrase. Even if that phrase isn't in your video, even if it's just some kind of yellow headline from a tabloid, but that will be the hook that grabs attention and encourages people to click on the video. So you need to understand that if you've made a great thumbnail, but your video is just not good at all and it's boring, then you won't stay in YouTube's recommendations for long. Make sure that the content itself is also juicy, interesting, and useful. So if you combine these two factors, a good thumbnail and great content, you'll get a lot of views. Now, when it comes to TikTok and Instagram Reels, consistency is definitely more important here, especially on TikTok. You need to be consistent. But besides being consistent, we also shouldn't forget about quality. Your consistency without quality won't lead to growth. Just like with quality, if you're not consistent, if you only upload one video a month or every 2 weeks, that won't help you grow well either. Partly because you won't be getting regular feedback from your audience, and there will be people who are more active content creators and bloggers, and who will create more interesting content, naturally drawing the audience along with them. The most important principle I've always followed is to stay on the radar as often, as long, and as much as possible. So, if you disappear from the radar, you lose your audience. They start drifting to other accounts, and you begin to see unsubscribes. So, it's essential to be systematic. If you've already chosen the path of blogging, be systematic. But don't forget why you're doing this. At some point, there might really come a time when you'll start thinking about which direction you want to go next. It happens. There can be burnout, there can be some kind of creative crisis. It's still quite a creative process when we talk about shooting video content. You need to come up with an idea. You need to shoot it and you need to edit it. And of course, there are a lot of routine processes that won't keep you in a good state of mind and sometimes lead to burnout. So, make sure that your workflow is balanced and efficient. You're not overworking yourself with content creation, and you're not trying to squeeze out something that isn't there. Otherwise, just like with energy, your enthusiasm will decline, and that will affect your content and how the audience perceives what they see. They will see you tired, sad, and dissatisfied, and they won't want to watch that kind of picture. You need to be interesting. So energize yourself and energize your audience. Well, we've already gone through almost half of our course. Half is already behind us. I hope you've already started thinking about how you're going to develop your blog and that you've found some motivation and energy for it. I want to remind you that I would appreciate everyone who helps promote this course and leaves a 5-star review. I am grateful to each of you because it is very important for me that as many people as possible see this course and understand that this is not some kind of launch of a spaceship. Anyone can do this. And most importantly, I saw the huge potential in this opportunity. Now we're moving on to the next lesson, which will be dedicated to the topic of content planning, creating a content plan, and the nuances you need to keep in mind. Creating a content plan. For this, you'll need a small table. and I'll attach the table for you in this course as a separate file for you. You'll be able to easily download it and use it to create your own content plan efficiently. What should be taken into account? Since we're talking about video content, which is the main focus today, these are short vertical videos. What will you need? You need to clearly understand what the hook will be. We'll talk about the structure of the video in the next lessons. What will the hook be? What will grab the viewer's attention? Next, you need to understand the structure of your video itself, the actual meat, the content that will be presented to the viewer, what you will say, what you will do, what actions will take place, and where you will be. This is the second part. And the third part is the call to action. Not unimportant. We're interested in specific actions that will be taken at the end. We need to think about them at the very early stage, even at the moment when we're coming up with the idea. We need the viewer to, for example, share this video or save it at the end. We need to say this, or better yet, act it out, so that it's not just some message, but it's attractive, something that grabs attention and evokes a certain emotion. Emotion in content is what triggers the most people. It's the emotion we need to create in each of our videos. Sadness, joy, laughter, hate, anger. It doesn't matter what the emotion is. If there was an emotion, it will work positively. So you need to think about what we're going to shoot, what our themes will be. We have a general theme for our blog. We've already decided, let's say, it's travel, cooking, sports, motorsports, cars, anything really. We've settled on the theme of our blog, and now we need to figure out what topics our videos will cover, meaning what themes we'll be shooting videos on. And here, we really need to put in some work. We need to understand what interests the audience. I'll say it again. We're creating a content plan based on not just our interests, but also those of our audience. So we conduct certain research, we do an analysis, we analyze Google Trends, we look at the content that's in demand right now on social media, the topics that everyone is talking about. We take a look at YouTube. There are also a huge number of other tools that will help you do this. Based on them, we start building our video. Let me give you an example. So, if we know that a new robot from Tesla, the Tesla bot, just came out, and we understand that everyone was talking about it in October, November, the topic has shifted a bit by the time we're recording this course. Now people are talking more about crypto and the presidential elections in the US. But let's say back in October, everyone was talking about this bot. What can we shoot? We can make a comedy sketch. There was a lot of humor around these bots. We can make a tutorial, we can do a review, and so on. So, we find topics that are currently trending. If you realize that it's spring and everyone wants to get in shape for summer, then we start coming up with content on how to quickly get ready for summer. It could be humor. We can create entertaining content that will amuse people. It's not that he's going to provide any real knowledge. Although to some extent that can also happen if you make your content educational and entertaining. So that's also a really good direction, and you'll be building and shaping your content for the month based on what the theme of your blog is, and what subtopics you've chosen for your videos. In the next lesson, we'll continue discussing the topic of the content plan. So friends, we continue the lesson on content planning. We've already figured out how to develop the core idea of your blog and how to find the most in-demand and interesting topics for your target audience. And as I mentioned earlier, you will have a table that you will find in this course. You will need to fill out this table as follows. First, you need to decide on the idea. We talked about this earlier too. What will the core idea be? And when you're filling out the content plan, spend 80% of your time focusing on the hook. What is a hook? We'll talk about this in more detail in the next lesson. To jump ahead, I'll say that a hook is what makes a person get into this video, meaning it's what makes them realize that yes, it's worth watching this video. And hooks can be an action, a caption you put, or a phrase you say. All of these are hooks. There's no point in creating the video further if you have a weak hook. So if you don't grab the viewer's attention right at the beginning, they'll just scroll past it. That means all the time and energy you spend on creating the idea will be wasted. That is, If you don't catch the viewer's attention at the very beginning, then, accordingly, he skims through it. And that means all the time and energy you spend on creating an idea will be wasted. What can you do if, let's say, you made the wrong hook and your video didn't get views, but you realize that this video has potential and is actually interesting? You can reshoot it, you can change the hook, and reshoot the content, and re-upload the video to see what comes of it. And maybe the second time the video will get more views, but I want to warn you, TikTok really doesn't like copy-paste. It doesn't like copied content. So if you already have the idea, you'll need to reshoot some clips, mainly the hook, and maybe the core part of your video as well, meaning the content part will also need to be adjusted. That's what you need to pay attention to. Now, about the number of videos. How many videos do you need to shoot in a week and in a month? If you start by making 3-4 videos a week, that's already pretty good. At first, I recommend focusing on quality rather than quantity, because if you just go for quantity, you can spam the algorithms. And at some point, they'll just stop showing your videos. I have people, in my experience, who started off well with their blogs, but then they switched to just spamming. What am I doing? So I'm just filming everything, like I'm doing this, I'm here. And of course, that won't be interesting. Earlier, we talked about how today, if you want to grow as a blogger, I wouldn't even call it just blogging. I would call it being a content creator, an influencer, a thought leader in one area or another. So you could talk about what you do, but maybe in stories or in a fitting YouTube vlog, some practice vlogs on TikTok, but your daily vlog needs structure, which we'll cover soon. You must grab and keep attention and call to action. I know that some people practice creating vlogs on TikTok, but you need to understand that even your vlog about how you spend your day should have a certain structure, which we'll talk about in the upcoming lessons. So you definitely need to grab attention, keep the attention, and make a call to action. In this video, you might talk about your day, but it needs to be done with the right structure. And then, of course, you grow your blog even on TikTok and in Reels. To start, if you're going to make 3 videos a week, I also recommend doing stories that you can post on both TikTok and Instagram. Stories are always a great additional tool that helps warm up your audience and slightly improve communication. Let's say, to be a bit closer to your target audience, it doesn't require a big-time investment from you. Just say what happened, give some additional information. And now we've come to a topic that's really important, the structure of your video. In the last lesson, we discussed that no matter what kind of video you're making, or what format you choose, the structure is always the same. And it's this structure that affects how deeply your video will be watched, what the watch depth will be for your next video. And here at the first stage, as we've always said, you need to think about the hook. And it's the structure that affects how deeply your video will be watched, what the watch depth will be for your next video. And here at the first stage, as we've always said, you need to think about the hook that will catch your future viewer and hopefully subscriber. And here, at the first stage, as we've always said, you need to think about the hook that will catch your future viewer and hopefully subscriber. What is a hook? We discussed that a hook can be some kind of action that happens and grabs attention. It can be an action that breaks certain thought patterns. It could be an action, for example, where someone hits someone else, and you film a continuation as if you were the one who got hit, and you bounce back and start saying something. So that's the hook, related to some kind of transition, meaning from one shot to another, and here it all depends on your imagination. There can also be hooks in the form of phrases. So you can say a phrase that can be understood in different ways, or a phrase that is your unique selling proposition, USP. We discussed what a USP is in the previous lessons. A USP that solves the problem of your target audience. So let's give an example. If I say that until I was 30, I didn't know how to properly peel apples, and that was a revelation for me. That kind of phrase will capture the attention of those who eat apples regularly, and the fact that I didn't know this until I was 30, that's very significant. This phrase in particular helps a person understand how long it took you to learn this secret. And of course, people don't want to waste just their time, so they'll watch your video to understand the topic. And here, as I mentioned, at this first stage, the hook can be various mechanisms that you will use. It's like content formats. Hooks have their own formats, and you can develop the most effective hook that you'll use for each of your videos going forward. Experiment. Try out different options. See what works best in your case, what resonates better with your target audience, because for some, a hook in the form of text works better in a certain niche, while for others, a spoken phrase or an observed action will be much more effective for viewers. So everything here is very individual, and when we talk about video content, there's a lot of experimentation involved. You have to try things out, you have to experiment, and you need to find what works for you. Over time, by creating one video, then another, a third, a 10th, a 100th, you'll discover your format, your uniqueness, and even your identity in your video content. You have to try, you have to experiment, you have to find what works specifically for you. So, over time, having created one video, the second, the third, the 10th, the 100th, you will find your format, your uniqueness, your identity, even in your video content. That will help you get more views, and as a result, help you grow your blog. I'm going to call it a blog, but what I mean by that is your account, where you create content and in doing so, attract an audience to yourself. It's commonly believed that a blog is when we talk about ourselves and what's happening in our lives. So of course, don't always want to call it blogging. I would rather call it being a content creator. And this is a trend that's really picking up speed right now. If you know how to create great content, you'll gain popularity and influence over other people because the audiences that follow you become loyal to you. And of course, you'll be able to sell them your products and services. In the next lesson, we'll go over what the middle part is, the main idea, how to write it, and what it should include. So, we're moving on to the next topic, or rather, a part of our topic on video structure, which is the structure of the content we're going to create together. This is the middle part, and in this middle part, we need to provide maximum value, the value of your video. The person who is going to spend their time watching your video needs to understand why they're doing it in the first place. They need to understand that by watching this video, they'll be solving some kind of problem of theirs. In the hook, you stated that there is some problem and you will give him a solution. Accordingly, now in the middle part of your video, you will have to give it this very benefit, this very value. If it's a life hack, then show it. If it's a lesson, then show how you do something. If it's a story, then tell it. But what do you need to remember when you're creating this part of your video? Don't rush to give the answer right away. Because if you do that, the person will hear the answer and think, oh, I already know this. And they'll skip your video, which will really hurt your viewing depth. If you give them time to watch at least 50, 60, 70% of your video before revealing the cards, it will be much more effective for you. But there's a downside to this. If you bore the person by just stating useless facts and rambling on, it will lead to the same result. The person will skip your video. But what should we do? It's really important to think through the structure of this part. Think through every phrase you say and guide the person, gradually leading them to the answer they're looking for. Here, you can play around a bit with it, maybe make a small reference to your own story, because storytelling is also a very powerful tool that helps keep attention. So, you need to find a balance, like on a tightrope. So, you're walking on a tightrope, where point A is the beginning of this part and point B is the end. And your task is to balance between the answer you need to give your viewer and keeping them engaged in the video for as long as possible, holding their attention. And you balance like that. In this way, you grasp firmly that point, you kind of distance it, and at just the right moment, you reveal the cards. And give a specific answer to the question you mentioned at the very beginning. And this way, you get the most effective video with an effective viewing depth. And this part needs to be detailed as much as possible in the content plan we talked about in previous lessons. What's going to happen? What are you going to say? What scene? what outfit, what clothes, what people should be involved. All these details need to be carefully worked out. And at the stage of creating the content plan, the better you work through this part, the better the result you'll get. And now the last concluding part, it's the call to action. We need to clearly understand what we want from the client, from the viewer. If we want him to share the video, then we ask him to share it. But not just share the video, but to create a specific motivation. We'll talk about these motivations and techniques, how to use a call to action, and what you need to offer your future subscriber and current viewer. We'll talk in the next lesson. But the point is, you can't just leave the video, you just showed the result and that's it. There definitely needs to be a call to action. In the end, you need to get something from your viewer to motivate him to do something, so to speak. But we'll talk about that in the next lesson.